My sister and I finished medical school together, but our parents paid off her student loans while ignoring my costs. She deserves it more, honey. When they attended her debt-free celebration, they had a little surprise waiting. She deserves it more, honey, Mom said, not even looking up from the stack of gourmet cupcakes she was arranging on the tiered display stand. Jessica's always been more dedicated to her studies. You've always had other interests. The casual dismissal stung worse than if she'd slapped me. I stood in my parents' kitchen, my medical school diploma still fresh in its frame, trying to process what I just heard. Mom, we both graduated with honors. We had the exact same GPA. My voice was steady, but my hands shook slightly. I don't understand why you and Dad would pay off all of Jessica's loans, but none of mine. Audrey. My mother sighed, finally looking up at me with that familiar expression of mild disappointment. Your sister doesn't have a wealthy mentor like Dr. Fleming taking an interest in her future. You've always had advantages Jessica didn't. I almost laughed. Dr. Vivian Fleming was my research advisor because I'd earned that position through 80-hour weeks in the lab, while Jessica was skiing in Aspen with our parents. The advantage had been working myself to exhaustion while my twin sister received our parents' unwavering emotional and financial support. So I'm being punished for finding my own mentorship opportunities? I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. My father walked in, putting an arm around my mother's shoulders. No one's punishing you, Audrey. We're just being practical. Your sister needs more help than you do. You've always been more resourceful. Resourceful, the word they used to justify never attending my undergraduate research presentations while flying across the country for Jessica's volleyball tournaments. Resourceful, their explanation for why Jessica got a new car for her 20th birthday, while I received a gas station gift card. Tomorrow was Jessica's debt-free celebration party, my parents' idea, of course. They'd invited extended family, her friends, even some of our former professors. The invitations read, "Celebrating Jessica's achievement," as if graduating medical school debt-free had been her accomplishment, rather than our parents' financial decision. I need to head out, I said, finally gathering my bag. Early shift at the hospital tomorrow. Will you still make it to Jessica's party? Mom asked, concern finally entering her voice. Not for me, but for how my absence might affect my sister's special day. I'll be there, I promised, though the thought made my stomach twist. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Fleming, need to speak with you urgently about the Patterson Fellowship. Big news. I stared at the screen, a cold realization settling over me. My parents' favoritism wasn't just unfair, it was about to become publicly humiliating, and there was nothing I could do to stop what was coming. My twin sister Jessica and I had been on oddly divergent paths since the moment we were born. I arrived first. She followed 6 minutes later. According to family lore, I was quiet and observant while Jessica announced her arrival with strong, healthy cries. Perhaps that set the pattern for everything that followed. Throughout our childhood in Cleveland, Jessica was the outgoing twin, the one who made friends easily and excelled at sports. I was quieter, more bookish, spending hours in our local library learning about everything from astronomy to zoology. Our parents attended every one of Jessica's soccer games and dance recitals. My science fair victories warranted a quick "good job, Audrey," and a pat on the head. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. When we both announced our intentions to pursue medicine, our parents seemed thrilled for Jessica. For me, there were concerned conversations about the workload and whether I could handle the pressure. Medical school isn't just about being smart, Audrey, my father had warned. It's about determination and grit. Jessica has always pushed herself harder. The irony was painful. Throughout undergraduate studies at Ohio State, I maintained a perfect GPA while working part-time to cover expenses. Jessica struggled with organic chemistry and physics, requiring expensive tutors our parents readily provided. When she needed to retake the MCAT, they paid for an exclusive prep course. When I scored in the 98th percentile on my first attempt, they simply nodded and said, "That's nice, dear." Despite everything, I never resented Jessica. She was my sister, my twin, and I loved her. She didn't create our parents' favoritism. She just benefited from it. Sometimes I even thought she felt uncomfortable with their obvious preference, though she never said anything directly. We both got accepted to the same medical school in Michigan, and for 4 years we studied together, supported each other through grueling rotations, and celebrated each other's successes. I thought perhaps finally our parents would see us as equally accomplished. Instead, they found new ways to elevate Jessica's achievements while minimizing mine. When I was selected to present research at a national conference, Jessica had coincidentally received an award for community service that same weekend. Guess which event our parents attended? But everything changed during our final year when Dr. Vivian Fleming, a renowned neurosurgeon, took notice of my research on pediatric traumatic brain injuries. Under her mentorship, I flourished. For the first time, I had someone who recognized my potential, who pushed me to excel not despite my personality, but because of it. "You have a gift for research, Audrey," Dr. Fleming told me once. "You see patterns others miss. That kind of insight can't be taught." If only my parents could see me through her eyes. The morning before Jessica's celebration, I met Dr. Fleming in her office. She was a striking woman in her 60s, with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes that missed nothing. Her office walls were covered with awards, published papers, and photos with medical luminaries from around the world. "Audrey, sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I have extraordinary news." My heart raced. For weeks, I'd been waiting to hear about the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, the most prestigious neurosurgical research position in the country. Only one graduating medical student nationwide would receive it. "The committee has made their decision on the Patterson Fellowship," Dr. Fleming said, her expression carefully neutral. I held my breath. "They've selected you," she said, breaking into a broad smile. "Congratulations, Dr. Audrey Collins. You're going to Baltimore." Joy, disbelief, and validation crashed over me in waves. The Patterson Fellowship, the pinnacle achievement for any neuroresearcher. Mine. I don't know what to say," I stammered. "You earned this, Doctor," Fleming said firmly. "Your research on neurovascular regeneration after traumatic injury was groundbreaking. The committee was particularly impressed with your dual approach combining surgical innovation with pharmacological intervention. The fellowship included a generous stipend, housing allowance, and most importantly, complete loan forgiveness. I would be debt-free, just like Jessica. But through my own merit rather than parental favoritism. There's more, Doctor," Fleming continued, her eyes twinkling. "I've been invited to Jessica's celebration tonight. Your parents extended an invitation as a courtesy to faculty, not knowing about our mentorship. I'd like to announce the fellowship news there, if you're comfortable with that." My stomach dropped. "I don't know, Dr. Fleming. It's supposed to be Jessica's night, and my parents might see it as me trying to steal her spotlight." Dr. Fleming's expression hardened slightly. "Audrey, I've observed your family dynamic over the past 2 years. I've seen your parents at hospital functions, heard how they speak about both you and your sister. I understand your hesitation, but sometimes recognition needs to be public to be acknowledged at all." She was right, of course. If my parents heard about the fellowship privately, they'd find a way to minimize it, or attribute it to luck rather than achievement. "Okay." I nodded slowly. "You can announce it." As I left her office, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Mom's going overboard for tonight. It's embarrassing. Wish she'd put this much effort into celebrating both of us graduating. See you there? Heart." I stared at the message, confused. It was the first time Jessica had ever acknowledged our parents' unequal treatment. Before I could formulate a response, another text came through, this time from my mother. "Don't forget business casual for tonight, and please, let your sister have her moment. This is very important to her." The contrast between the two messages was jarring. Perhaps I had been wrong about Jessica all along, and perhaps tonight would reveal truths my parents had been avoiding for 26 years. Jessica's debt-free celebration was being held at an upscale restaurant in downtown Detroit. My parents had rented out the entire rooftop terrace, an extravagance that surely cost thousands. As I stepped off the elevator, I was greeted by a large banner reading, "Congratulations, Dr. Jessica," with no mention that there were, in fact, 2 Dr. Collins in the family now. I smoothed down my navy blue dress and took a deep breath. This was Jessica's night, regardless of what Dr. Fleming planned to announce. I wouldn't let years of resentment ruin my relationship with my twin. "Audrey." Jessica spotted me immediately, breaking away from a group of relatives to rush over. She looked stunning in a silver cocktail dress, her blonde hair identical to mine in color, but cut in a trendy bob, while I kept mine long-styled perfectly. "Thank God you're here." Aunt Patty has asked me 5 times if I have a boyfriend yet. I laughed despite my nerves. What did you tell her? That I'm married to medicine, but if she knows any eligible neurosurgeons, I'm taking applications. Jessica linked her arm through mine. Seriously though, this is ridiculous. Mom invited half the medical school. Dean Wilson is here. I scanned the crowded terrace and indeed spotted the dean chatting with our father. Wow, they really went all out, too all out, it's mortifying. Jessica lowered her voice. And why just for me? We both graduated. We both worked our asses off. The knot in my stomach loosened slightly. Maybe Jessica was more aware than I'd given her credit for. Audrey, Jessica. Our mother appeared, champagne in hand. Jessica. The Hendersons just arrived. You remember Thomas Henderson, the chief of surgery at Cleveland Memorial? You should come say hello. She took Jessica's arm, effectively separating us, then glanced back at me. Audrey, could you check if the caterers have put out the gluten-free options? Your cousin Beth is being difficult about her diet again. And just like that, I was relegated to catering management while Jessica was paraded before hospital administrators. Some things never changed. I was directing waitstaff to the correct table when Dr. Fleming arrived. She looked elegant in a crimson pantsuit, commanding attention without effort. Audrey, she said warmly, embracing me, are you ready for our announcement? I'm not sure, I admitted. The timing feels complicated. Dr. Fleming surveyed the party, taking in the banner, the professionally decorated cake with just Jessica's name, the slideshow of photos that featured Jessica prominently with me occasionally visible in the background. I see, she said quietly. More complicated than I realized. Across the terrace I watched as my parents introduced Jessica to Dr. Margaret Wu, the chief neurosurgeon at Detroit Medical Center, where both Jessica and I had applied for residency positions. My stomach clenched. Were they trying to secure Jessica a spot through personal connections? Dr. Fleming. My father had spotted her and was now approaching with my mother and Jessica in tow. What an honor to have you join us. I understand you've done some work with Audrey. Some work? Dr. Fleming raised an eyebrow. Audrey has been my primary research partner for the past 2 years. Her contribution to our traumatic brain injury study was instrumental to its success. My parents exchanged a glance I couldn't quite interpret. How nice, my mother said vaguely. Jessica has also been very involved in neurosurgical research. In fact, Dr. Wu was just saying how impressed she is with Jessica's application to her program. I felt a flush of anger rising in my cheeks. Jessica hadn't done neurosurgical research. Her focus was neuropsychiatry, an entirely different field. My parents were blatantly misrepresenting her experience, potentially at the expense of my own opportunities. Dr. Fleming's expression remained pleasant, but I could see a steely glint in her eyes. Is that so? How fascinating. I was under the impression that Jessica's focus was on psychiatric applications, rather than surgical interventions. An awkward silence fell over our small group. My trap of hope was closing around me. This announcement was going to make things worse, not better. The dinner portion of the evening was underway, with my parents seated at the head table alongside Jessica, our grandparents, and Dr. Wu. I was placed at a secondary table with cousins and family friends, close enough to hear the conversation but not participate in it. We always knew Jessica was destined for greatness, my father was saying to Dr. Wu. Even when the girls were little, Jessica showed such determination. She's always been our ambitious one. Each word was a tiny dagger. I pushed my food around my plate, appetite gone. Nearby, Dr. Fleming was seated with other faculty members, occasionally catching my eye with sympathetic glances. After dessert was served, my father stood and tapped his glass for attention. Thank you all for coming to celebrate our daughter Jessica's remarkable achievement. As many of you know, medical school is a grueling journey, and to emerge not only with a degree, but debt-free is truly something special. The crowd applauded politely. Jessica looked increasingly uncomfortable. We're blessed to have been able to support Jessica throughout her education, my mother added, standing to join my father. We always believed in investing in her future because we knew she would make us proud. I stared at my plate, hot tears threatening to spill over. The wording was precise. They had invested in Jessica, not in both their daughters. The message couldn't be clearer. Actually, Jessica said, suddenly standing up, I'd like to say something. She looked directly at me, her expression apologetic. This celebration feels incomplete. Audrey and I both graduated with identical GPAs. We both worked incredibly hard. And frankly, Audrey worked harder because she did it without the support system I had. A hush fell over the crowd. My parents looked stunned. Jessica, my mother whispered. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time, Jessica insisted. I can't accept recognition that excludes my sister. It's not right, and it never has been. My throat tightened with emotion. After all these years, Jessica was publicly acknowledging the imbalance. It was both vindicating and heartbreaking. My father recovered quickly, his voice overly jovial. Of course, we're proud of both our girls. Audrey has done very well too. But tonight is about celebrating Jessica being debt-free, which is a special achievement. An achievement you facilitated, not one I earned, Jessica countered, her voice steady but firm. The tension in the room was palpable. This was quickly becoming the scene my parents had always feared, their perfect family image cracking in public. Dr. Fleming chose that moment to stand. If I might add something to this conversation, she said, her authoritative voice cutting through the murmurs. This seems like an opportune time to share some news about Audrey that many of you may not be aware of. My parents exchanged worried glances. Audrey's research on neurovascular regeneration has earned her the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Fleming announced. For those unfamiliar, this is the single most prestigious position offered to a graduating medical student in the country. It comes with full loan forgiveness and a substantial stipend. Gasps and murmurs spread through the room. Dr. Wu was looking at me with new interest. My cousins were whispering excitedly. In fact, Dr. Fleming continued, the selection committee specifically cited Audrey's innovative dual approach methodology, which she developed largely independently, while balancing a full clinical rotation schedule. I've had the privilege of mentoring many promising physicians, but rarely have I encountered the level of dedication and insight that Audrey consistently demonstrates. The room erupted in applause. Genuine, enthusiastic applause for me. People were turning in their seats to look at me, smiling and nodding with respect. My parents remained frozen. Their expressions a complicated mix of shock, confusion, and dawning horror, as they realized that their carefully constructed narrative about their daughters was publicly unraveling. Jessica was beaming at me, not a hint of jealousy in her expression. Dr. Fleming wasn't finished. Additionally, I'm pleased to announce that I've personally arranged for the remainder of Audrey's medical school loans to be covered through our department's Merit Scholarship Fund, a decision unanimously approved by the board in recognition of her extraordinary contributions to our research program. I was debt-free too, and I had earned it. After Dr. Fleming's announcement, the celebration shifted dramatically. Faculty members who had previously gravitated toward Jessica were now approaching me, asking about my research and congratulating me on the fellowship. Several of my clinical supervisors shared glowing stories about my work with patients that I hadn't realized they'd even noticed. My parents remained at their table, shock still evident on their faces. They weren't just processing the news of my fellowship and loan forgiveness, they were witnessing the dismantling of the narrative they'd constructed about their daughters. The quiet, self-sufficient twin they had consistently overlooked was now the center of professional admiration. Jessica made her way to my side, champagne in hand. "Congratulations, sis," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "The Patterson Fellowship, that's incredible. Why didn't you tell me?" "I only found out this morning," I said. "And I didn't want to overshadow your celebration." Jessica frowned. "This ridiculous party was Mom and Dad's idea, not mine. I tried to tell them it was over the top and unfair to you. But you know how they get once they've decided something." "You did?" I asked, surprised. "Of course I did." Jessica looked hurt. "Audrey, I've always known they treated us differently. I didn't know how to fix it without making things worse." Before I could respond, Dr. Margaret Wu approached us. "Dr. Collins," she said, looking directly at me. "I was very impressed by Dr. Fleming's account of your research. We should discuss whether you'd consider bringing your work to our neurosurgery department instead of Johns Hopkins." I blinked in surprise. "That's very flattering, Doctor." "Wu, but she's already accepted the Patterson," Jessica interjected, putting her arm around my shoulders proudly. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But you should know my sister never does just one revolutionary thing at a time. I'd bet she'll have another groundbreaking study underway within months of arriving in Baltimore." Dr. Wu smiled. "Well, when you've completed the fellowship, keep Detroit in mind. We'd be fortunate to have you." She nodded to Jessica. "Both of you in your respective specialties." After she walked away, I turned to Jessica in amazement. You didn't have to do that. I know you wanted to stay in Detroit for your residency. And I still can, Jessica said. But I won't do it by letting Mom and Dad manipulate the situation, or by letting you miss out on opportunities. That's not who I want to be. Across the room, I saw my parents finally rising from their table, moving hesitantly in our direction. Their path was slow, interrupted by guests who wanted to talk about me, a novel experience that was clearly unsettling for them. Here they come, Jessica murmured. Ready for this? Not really, I admitted. Dr. Fleming certainly had some impressive things to say about you, my father said when they finally reached us. His tone carefully calibrated to sound proud while masking his confusion. The Patterson Fellowship, that's quite an honor. Why didn't you tell us you were even being considered for something so prestigious? My mother asked, a hint of accusation in her voice. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. You've made it clear where your support and interest lie. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. That's not fair, Audrey, my father began. We've always supported both of you. Differently, my mother interjected quickly. We supported you both differently because you had different needs. Jessica shook her head. Mom, Dad, let's not do this tonight, but we are going to have a real conversation about this soon, all of us. She gave me a meaningful look. No more pretending. Dr. Fleming appeared at my elbow, saving me from having to respond. Audrey. The dean would like a word. Something about featuring your fellowship in the alumni magazine. She smiled at my parents, her expression pleasant but her eyes steely. You must be incredibly proud to have raised two such accomplished daughters. Though I imagine it's particularly gratifying to see Audrey's hard work recognized after all she's overcome. The emphasis on overcome was subtle but unmistakable. My parents had the grace to look embarrassed. Well, my mother said weakly, we've always known Audrey was special. Too little, too late. The week after the celebration was transformative. News of my Patterson Fellowship spread through the medical community in Detroit, and suddenly doors that had been closed to me swung open. Former professors who had given Jessica extensions but denied mine were now emailing to congratulate me. Classmates who had barely acknowledged my existence during 4 years of medical school suddenly claimed close friendship. My parents, meanwhile, were attempting damage control. They'd shown up at my apartment the day after the party with gift bags and forced smiles. We've been thinking, my father said as he placed a small box on my coffee table. With both of you graduating and starting your careers, we should get you girls something special. We got you this. Inside was a rose gold watch, identical to the one they'd given Jessica for her birthday 6 months earlier. It's lovely, I said without reaching for it, though a bit late. My mother flinched. Audrey, we know you must feel overlooked sometimes, but everything we did was because we knew you could handle challenges on your own. Jessica needed more support. That's a convenient narrative, I replied, keeping my voice steady. But it doesn't explain why you attended her presentations, but skipped mine. Why you paid for her MCAT prep course, but told me to use free online resources. Why you covered her living expenses during medical school, but suggested I take out additional loans for mine. We only have so much money, Audrey, my father protested. We had to make choices. Yes, you did, I agreed. And consistently, you chose Jessica. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We love you both equally, she insisted. Maybe you do, I conceded. But you haven't treated us equally, and watches and belated recognition won't change that. The phone rang, Dr. Fleming calling to discuss my upcoming move to Baltimore. I answered it gratefully, turning away from my parents' stunned faces. Yes. I'm available to discuss the housing options, I said into the phone. In fact, your timing is perfect. 3 weeks later, I stood in my empty apartment, the last boxes packed and ready for the moving company. Jessica sat on the windowsill, watching me tape up a final container of books. I still can't believe you're leaving next week, she said. Detroit won't be the same without you. You'll be too busy with your residency to notice I'm gone, I teased, though there was truth in it. We'd been inseparable through medical school, but our paths were finally diverging. Mine to Johns Hopkins, hers staying at Detroit Medical. I keep thinking about what Mom and Dad did, Jessica said suddenly. Or didn't do, I guess. All these years, I thought I was the lucky one because they paid more attention to me. But they were really holding me back, making me dependent on their approval. I sat beside her on the windowsill. You didn't do anything wrong, Jess. I didn't do enough right either, she countered. I should have spoken up sooner, she sighed. They're devastated, you know. Mom keeps crying about how you must hate them. Dad's telling everyone who'll listen about his brilliant daughter at Johns Hopkins like he personally funded your research. Let them, I said, surprising myself with how little it bothered me now. Their approval doesn't define me anymore. And it was true. The constant ache of seeking validation from parents who would never truly see me had finally subsided. Dr. Fleming's mentorship had shown me what genuine support looked like, challenging me when I needed pushing, defending me when I needed protection, and always seeing my potential without qualification. So what happens now? Jessica asked. With us, I mean. I took her hand. We find our own way forward without the competition they created between us. I'd like that. Jessica smiled, squeezing my hand. Dr. Audrey Collins, Patterson Fellow. I'm so proud of you, sis. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. The path ahead was challenging but clear, and entirely mine to navigate on my own terms.